Happy Monday, everyone. I hope everyone is surviving our winter weather. I just wanted to touch base on our voice load discussion this week. Particularly, I wanted to talk a little bit about interviewing, although obviously grounded theory is not all about interviewing, but interviewing is something that is going to carry through regardless of what qualitative methodology you select for a particular study. I appreciated the comments about the layers of meaning behind what your participants said, not just the words that they used, but also how they said it, the tone of their voice, their inflection, possibly even some of those non-verbal cues that you might pick up on if you were doing an interview in person, pauses, the way they hold their body, things like that. It does take skill as an interviewer to track down those other levels of meaning on the fly. One of the things that I appreciate about grounded theory is that it allows you to kind of slow things down a little bit, and so you will do an interview and you'll memo and you'll identify those deeper levels of meaning, and then in the next interview you can follow up on those deeper levels. It gives you, you're sort of further down the path when you start the next interview. Unlike, say, interviews for a case study, we're trying to collect the same data from multiple participants so you can triangulate. It's a much more flexible approach, much more adaptive, that allows you to track down those deeper levels from one participant to the next. I picked up on a bit of unease with grounded theory. I'd say of the methods we've covered this term, it's probably the least structured. Certainly compared to Yin's model of case study, grounded theory might feel like a blank slate rather than a roadmap. Personally, that level of ambiguity makes me anxious, and I have yet to conduct a grounded theory study, despite getting a lot of criticism from certain quarters for using deductive approaches based on existing theory. In some places, some quarters of research, you might hear grounded theory is sort of the gold standard of qualitative research, but I don't think that's the case. I think there's validity of using deductive and inductive approaches. I particularly like using them together. In my dissertation research, I was able to use them together to sort of build on existing theory. In civic capacity theory is very much A plus B equals C. But what I found was that A plus B equals C goes back to A, goes back to B, and it was much more iterative, and it wasn't a linear process. And so that was my contribution to the literature on civic capacity. Let's see, kind of going back, I guess, to interviewing again, I had some other notes. Interviewing is a skill. It takes practice. It takes reflection. You might go back later and pull out your interviews and look at them again and see, put a critical lens on and see, where could you have done things differently. That was one reason I had you do interviews. It's because I do take practice to learn how to do. There are definitely some of my early interviews that I go back and read and I'm like, why did I say that? Or why did I cut that person off? Or why did I go on to the next question instead of following up on that? And just trying to kind of be aware of the mistakes or directions that I tend to take as an interviewer and try to make sure that I'm aware of those and not doing that. That's been really helpful for me to make sure that, I'm not cutting someone off or I'm not purposely moving them in a direction that they might not be going. I think for me, the things that I would like to work on going forward are that looking for that deeper level of meaning as I'm going and following up on that, rather than sort of moving from surface level question to surface level question. I think as you go through your interviews sort of within your project, if you're transcribing them and not waiting or just re-listening them and memoing, that can really help accelerate your interview skills. So I'm looking forward to reading your QRPs and looking at your posters. As a reminder, you need to go through and pose questions to one another, and then respond to the questions on your own poster.